The movie opens at a center for children with autism, where a military man and his wife are seeking help for their young son, Chris. The father, strict and disciplined, explains that Chris has difficulty adjusting due to their frequent relocations, a result of his military service. The institute offers to take in Chris, providing him with a more stable environment to help him manage his autism. However, the father refuses the offer. He believes that Chris should face the challenges of the real world head-on, rather than being sheltered from them. His philosophy is simple: life is tough, and Chris must learn to adapt, no matter how difficult it may be. In the waiting room, young Chris sits quietly on the floor, working on a puzzle. He rocks back and forth while softly chanting a nursery rhyme, Solomon Grundy, born on a Monday. As Chris nears the completion of the puzzle, frustration begins to build when he realizes a piece is missing. This missing piece sends him into a state of growing distress. Just as Chris is about to have a meltdown, a young girl sitting nearby notices his distress. She quietly reaches out and hands Chris the missing puzzle piece. Instantly, Chris is soothed. This small interaction showcases the delicate nature of his mind, where order and patterns are deeply important. Fast forward to the present, and Chris has grown into an accountant, meeting with a couple struggling with their finances. In his quiet, methodical way, he guides them through tax strategies, showing them how to save the most money. Grateful, the husband even invites Chris to their property to practice shooting. Meanwhile, Ray King, the director of the United States Treasury, summons a data analyst, Mary Beth Medina, to his office. He praises her work but questions why she hasn't aimed higher in her career. Despite her attempts to explain, King uncovers a darker truth: her sealed arrest records from her youth. With this revelation, King forces her into a difficult position: either help him with a special project or lose her job. The project? Unmasking a mysterious accountant who works with dangerous criminals, keeping their financial dealings in order, and occasionally taking lives himself. King gives Medina an ultimatum: find this man's identity by the end of the month or face the consequences. The movie continues with Chris returning to his quiet, solitary life. At home, he prepares a simple dinner and follows a strict routine before bed. As part of his nightly ritual, he turns on strobe lights, blasts heavy metal music, and uses a wooden rod to painfully massage his shins. His mind drifts back to a painful memory: the moment his mother left their family one Christmas when he was just a boy. After taking his medication, he drifts off to sleep. Later, Chris heads to the previous client's property for a shooting session. His precision with firearms leaves the client speechless as he effortlessly hits every target. From there, Chris drives to his storage unit, which is far more than just a place for extra belongings. Hidden inside is a fully equipped trailer filled with high-end collectibles, valuable artwork, and stacks of money in various currencies. The collection is as vast as his stash of weapons. After resting on his bed, another flashback hits, this time to his days in prison, where his cellmate taught him essential social skills and introduced him to the world of laundering money for criminals. Chris is abruptly awakened by a phone call. On the other end is a British woman, his unseen business associate, advising him to take on more typical clients to avoid raising suspicions. Though hesitant, he agrees. The next day, Chris meets with a new set of clients, the heads of a robotics prosthetics company. They explain that their in-house accountant, Dana, has uncovered missing funds and they need his help to solve the mystery. Chris takes the job without hesitation, assuring them he'll start investigating the next morning. The next sequence introduces Medina as she sifts through various images, zeroing in on one that offers a glimpse of the accountant's face. With a quick crop, she forwards it to the face mapping department for analysis, hoping to finally put a name to this elusive figure. Meanwhile, Brax, known for dealing with businessmen involved in shady dealings, makes his entrance. In Switzerland, he ambushes a man in a parking garage, slipping into his car before he can drive away. Holding a gun to the man's head, Brax forces him to promise that he'll stop cheating other companies out of their money. His job done. Back at the robotics company, Chris heads to the conference room, his designated workspace, and finds a woman asleep at the table. Awkwardly, he wakes her up, and she quickly apologizes. Introducing herself as Dana, she explains she's the one who initially discovered the missing funds. Dana assumes they'll be working closely together, but Chris immediately shuts down that idea, making it clear he prefers to work alone. Dana leaves the room, and Chris dives into his work. During a press conference, Medina receives a call from Homeland Security about her face recognition request. They've not only matched the image, but also found an audio clip from one of the accountant's previous hits. In the recording, a man begs for his life just before Chris finishes him off. The unsettling audio is sent to Medina. Later on, during lunch, Dana takes a seat next to Chris, trying to spark a conversation. Though Chris attempts to respond, it's obvious that socializing isn't his strong suit. Chris gets back to the conference room and dives deep into his work, covering not just the whiteboard, but even the windows with mathematical equations. The room becomes a maze of numbers until finally, something clicks, and he has a breakthrough. Meanwhile, at home, Medina plays the chilling audio file on repeat. Using advanced technology, she isolates the accountant's voice and makes a startling discovery. The man is quietly chanting a nursery rhyme to himself during the hit. This small detail brings her one step closer to understanding him. Excited by his findings, Chris pulls Dana into the room and shows her his progress. He explains that he's discovered a leak in the company's finances. Someone has been rerouting funds to a fake company. But before they can dig deeper, one of the shareholders bursts in, demanding answers. Chris admits he's not finished yet and needs more time to figure out who's responsible. Across town, Brax pays a midnight visit to another shareholder. He forces the man to fetch his insulin from the fridge and gives him a grim choice: inject himself and make it look like a suicide, allowing his wife to claim the life insurance, or fight back and risk both him and his wife being killed. The shareholder, trapped and terrified, chooses the needle, ending his own life. The next morning, when Chris returns to the conference room, he finds custodians wiping away his work from the windows. Panicked, he tells them to stop, but the company owner walks in and informs Chris that the shareholder he was investigating took his own life out of guilt for embezzling money. He asks Chris to drop the case, but Chris is visibly upset, frustrated that he couldn't finish his work. Later that night, back home, Chris has another intense ritual of self-punishment. With heavy metal music blasting and strobe lights flashing, he strikes his shins with a wooden rod, pushing himself to his limits. The following morning, as Chris heads out, a car starts trailing him closely. Unfazed, he goes to his client's property to practice shooting, and as he does, memories from his childhood resurface. He recalls brutal training sessions with his brother and a trainer their father hired. The boys would spar until they were battered and bruised, but even when the trainer called it quits, their father forced them to keep going, pushing them past their limits. Meanwhile, inside the house, the two clients are being held hostage by a pair of thugs. They demand that the wife lure Chris inside, but as one thug takes her to the front door, Chris takes him down from a distance with a clean shot. In a panic, the other thug forces the couple into a truck and attempts to escape, but Chris shoots at the vehicle, halting it in its tracks. He then drags the thug out and uses his belt to strangle him, demanding answers. The thug reveals he doesn't know who's in charge, only that he was ordered to kill both Chris and Dana. With no more information, Chris finishes him off and quickly heads to Dana's place. Just as Chris arrives at Dana's apartment complex, he spots a suspicious man following her into the elevator. Chris sneaks into the building, opting for the stairs to avoid detection. Dana, now in her apartment, is approached by two delivery men with a package. The situation turns violent when they force their way inside and try to overpower her, but Dana fights back, locking herself in the bathroom. Chris bursts into the apartment moments later, swiftly eliminating the intruders and telling Dana they need to leave. Brax, the man behind the thugs, soon gets the news. His men were killed by the accountant. Chris takes Dana to his trailer and asks her to wait outside while he prepares, but curiosity gets the better of her, and she steps inside. To her shock, she finds the space filled with cash, weapons, and all sorts of valuables. She starts questioning Chris, but he evades most of her inquiries, staying as cryptic as ever. Meanwhile, Medina gets an important update regarding the audio file she sent for analysis. Experts suggest that the man she's after might have suffered from childhood trauma or has a neurological condition that causes him to chant nursery rhymes under stress. Determined to crack the case, Medina heads to the IRS office and begins cross-referencing the accountant's aliases with individuals who have suspiciously high incomes. Chris and Dana later check into a fancy hotel, hoping to lay low for a while. Overwhelmed with curiosity, Dana finally confronts Chris about his impressive fighting skills. Chris opens up, telling her that his father, a military man, pushed him hard to train and defend himself against bullies. He also reveals his autism, explaining how difficult it is for him to connect with others, despite his desire to do so. Their conversation gets deep, and as emotions rise, Dana leans in to kiss him, but Chris pulls back abruptly. Suddenly, he has a revelation about the robotics case. They weren't just stealing money, they were siphoning funds out, only to reinvest and generate even bigger profits. Later, Chris is on Brax's tail, following him down a street when Brax catches on and starts shooting. Unfazed, Chris keeps after him, but the trail leads him to one of the shareholders' hotel rooms, only to find her shot dead. Meanwhile, Medina continues digging through IRS records with her colleague and finally uncovers the accountant's true identity, Chris Wolf. She learns that he works as an accountant at a small firm and uses several cash businesses he owns to funnel and hide his actual earnings. Surprisingly, most of the money Chris earns is donated to neuroscience organizations. Excited by the breakthrough, Medina immediately calls King with the update. When Chris returns to the hotel, he finds Dana fast asleep on the couch. Seeing her triggers another flashback to his childhood. This time, it's of his father forcing him and his brother to beat up some school bullies. Realizing how dangerous things have become, Chris makes the tough decision to leave Dana behind to keep her safe. He quietly packs up his things and leaves the hotel. At the same time, King and Medina lead a team of investigators to search Chris's house. They are struck by his unusual living arrangements, noting his arsenal of unregistered weapons and an advanced security system. As they wrap up the investigation, Brax gets a new job from the owner of the robotics company. He's tasked with installing security cameras in his house in case Chris comes after him. With the rest of the investigators dismissed, King and Medina linger behind, taking a moment to talk. King asks Medina to open up about her past arrest. She confesses that she once tried to kill a drug dealer who was selling drugs to her sister, and she doesn't regret it. King, in turn, shares his own long and exhausting journey trying to track down the accountant, detailing the hardships he's faced over the years. King then reveals a crucial moment in his pursuit of Chris. He was at the hotel where the infamous audio of Chris killing someone was recorded. King recalls how, after the incident, Chris held him at gunpoint and asked if he was a good father. When King replied, yes, Chris spared his life. Taking that as a sign to step away from his career, King was on the verge of quitting when a British woman called him, tipping him off about an illegal deal. The call pulled him back into the job, and King began using this mysterious woman as an informant. King also recounts how he interviewed Chris's former cellmate, a federal informant who had helped criminals launder money while they were in prison together. After being released, the cellmate was eventually hunted down, tortured, and killed by the very people he once worked for. Hearing the news devastated Chris, leading him to snap and escape from prison in a fit of rage. Years later, Chris attended his mother's funeral with his father, but things took a dark turn when they were asked to leave. Chris had a meltdown, and in the chaos, a security officer fired a shot at him. In a heartbreaking moment, Chris's father stepped in the way of the bullet and was killed. Back in the present, Medina, puzzled by King's revelations, asks why he's sharing all this with her. King explains that he wants her to be the one to take over the phone calls from the British woman after he retires in 7 months. Soon enough, the landline at Chris's house rings, and Medina answers. The British woman is on the other end, giving her a crucial tip about the robotics company. Meanwhile, at the company owner's house, Brax is already on high alert when Chris makes his move onto the property. Brax sends out his men to deal with the threat, but Chris takes them out one by one, sparing only one to interrogate for details about the house's layout. Watching the battle unfold through the security cameras, Brax tries to guide his men, but Chris, though injured, manages to take down every single one and make his way inside. As Brax watches, he suddenly realizes that the man he's been trying to stop is none other than his brother. He identifies this by Chris singing the same old nursery rhyme during this entire fight. Shocked, he orders his remaining men to stand down. Brax confronts Chris, furious at him for disappearing for over a decade, and even more upset that Chris had gone to their mother's funeral. Blaming Chris for their father's death, Brax lashes out, and Chris lets him vent his anger by hitting him. Once Brax calms down, Chris takes control, holding Brax at gunpoint to cool the tension. The brothers eventually reconcile, talking things out. Just as they begin to patch up their strained relationship, the company owner barges in, confused and angry that Brax hasn't handled Chris. Without hesitation, Chris shoots the owner, and the brothers resume their conversation. Before parting ways, Chris promises Brax that they'll meet up in a week to catch up properly. In a touching parallel, another set of parents visits the neuroscience center, seeking guidance for their son, who has autism. Their child wanders into one of the rooms and encounters Justine, the director's daughter, the same girl who had helped Chris with his puzzle as a child. The director explains that Justine is non-verbal, but uses a high-tech laptop to communicate. When Justine demonstrates how the device works, the voice it emits is none other than the British woman who has been assisting Chris all along. In the final scene, Dana returns to her apartment to clean up after the chaos. She receives a mysterious delivery and, upon opening it, discovers a classic painting. However, when she inspects it more closely, she realizes the outer canvas is just a cover. Peeling it back, she reveals a priceless painting she remembers from Chris's trailer, a sign that he hasn't forgotten her. Well, that's the end of this story. Consider subscribing for more recaps like this.